What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Danny from the We Got Action podcast, and I'm here to give you guys episode number 70, the big 70 before we hit the new year for 2024. Also want to wish you guys a happy holidays as well. Hope you guys had a great Merry Christmas with your families, your friends, anybody that you guys were celebrating with. A lot happened this weekend. Got a lot of NFL, a lot of NBA, and we're going to sprinkle in some MLB for you as well and kind of talk about the Dodgers' new pitcher that they had acquired, Yamamoto, star pitcher from Japan for 12 years, $325 million. I'm going to get into that a little bit later in the episode today. But first, we're going to start off with in the NFL. We're going to talk about Lamar Jackson and company and the Baltimore Ravens. I wouldn't say stomp, but maybe that might be the right word. Stomp the San Francisco 49ers 33-19. And we're also going to talk about Lamar Jackson possibly being the leading candidate for the MVP, which I believe after yesterday's game, or at least Christmas Day's game, he will be. And then I'm going to also give you guys a little bit of a top list, or at least top two list that I have for the MVP going forward before the season's end. Then we're going to be talking about the Kansas City Chiefs. Are the Kansas City Chiefs kind of spiraling a little bit? Obviously, it's more so on the offensive side of the ball, but can we still consider them a true contender even with the loss to the Las Vegas Raiders on Christmas Day? Following that, going to get into Joe Flacco, kind of revitalizing his career with the Cleveland Browns, kind of giving them a stable answer at quarterback. Obviously, they went through a little bit of a cycle there with the rookie quarterback from UCLA, and then they also went through it there with PJ Walker, and then obviously after the Deshaun Watson injury. But he's answering the call for them at quarterback. Can he be just enough or just good enough to lead them to possibly a conference title game or even a Super Bowl? Obviously, with that defense, all you have to do is just be competent enough. And you know what? The defense can probably hold up at the end of the day. And then last thing we're going to talk about for the NFL, DeMeco Ryans or Dan Campbell for Coach of the Year. Obviously, DeMeco Ryans, first-year head coach for the Houston Texans, and then Dan Campbell just won the NFC North Division with the Detroit Lions. Obviously, after first hard year of only winning, I think, one or two games, and I'll get into their record stats as well and kind of get into the odds of that. And then obviously, DeMeco Ryans really revitalizing and instilling a new culture in the Houston Texans and making them competitive this year, even with CJ Stroud at the helm. Then talking about for the NBA, going to be getting into it with Monty Williams and a little bit of the Detroit Pistons. Going to kind of talk about if they possibly have one of the worst records maybe ever, would it be possible to say that his job is still safe even going into next year? Now, I know that might be a far-fetched or anything like that, but I think it's kind of fair to say, because if you really don't see any type of improvement and these guys aren't really buying into what he's doing, possibly besides Cade or maybe even Jalen Duren, etc., your main players or your main core, if they're not really buying in, would they even take the chance of firing Monty Williams? Now, we know Monty Williams took the money because of that. You know, obviously got the huge contract, one of the highest paid coaches in the league. Next thing we're going to be talking about, Zion Williamson. His contract's no longer guaranteed after the 24-25 season, or at least the last 3 years of his rookie extension deal, because he only played in 29 games last year. And then Suns keep spiraling out of control. I would say out of control a little bit, because you know what, you still have two main stars, but is there really an answer for this team? Is there really an answer to get them going besides Bradley Beal? Or is it just that it's poorly constructed even when Bradley Beal does come back? And then again, talking about in the MLB, want to talk about possibly a salary problem. Does the MLB have a salary problem? Meaning, should a salary cap actually be put in place? Some sort of salary cap be put in place. But once we talk about that, is it fair to say a salary cap is needed when the MLB is really based off of the markets? Obviously, you know the main cities. You have LA, you have New York, the two teams in New York, two teams in LA. Obviously, it's Anaheim, not really as competitive there, but still the money is there. You have Chicago, etc., you know, things of that nature. Even Texas, I would consider a big market with how much that they're actually spending. So we'll get into that towards the end of the episode here. But again, leading off with it now, NFL, Lamar Jackson and company, are they officially the best team in the league? I would say yes. I think you have to put them there. You know, after yesterday, you really saw that defense come to play. You really saw them force Brock Purdy to make mistakes that really was out of his comfort zone, and you really didn't see from him all season long. So for them to really get 4 interceptions out of him and to take advantage of those interceptions as well, while that defense is only allowing 19 points for the game, you got to tip their hat to them. They came ready to play. And obviously, Brock Purdy, after the game, took responsibility for that, put the blame on himself, noting that the guys came to play. I didn't support them in that game, and I really didn't show up for this game as well. So I got to look myself in the mirror to really find out why I made those mistakes and what I can do to really improve to go from there on out. Now, when we're talking about Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, we always harped on Lamar possibly can't throw the ball. All he can do is run. Obviously, now you fully see, and again, we're not even done with this season yet, but even through these games so far, we have 3 games left. They have a great record in the AFC, but I think that we can truly see and all truly agree on that if Lamar Jackson has weapons, he can throw the ball. It doesn't have to necessarily be deep. Obviously, he can do that. He has a strong arm, but you need to be able to cover all 3 phases. You need to be able to cover the short field off the slants or in the middle of the field, outside of the numbers, which he's been really good at this year. And then also, obviously, those big, deeper plays with Zay Flowers, OBJ when he's gotten his opportunities, Rashad Bateman, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, if Mark Andrews was still in this lineup, they'd be even more dangerous at the tight end position. But Isaiah likely is filling in just fine for him. They're doing exactly what he needs. He was more of a blocking tight end for them, but he is showing that he can do more than just block at the end of the day. Now, what we're going to be talking about, MVP. Obviously, the MVP conversation has gotten really, really close. And obviously, after yesterday, it's pretty much, I believe, solidified that Lamar Jackson is going to win the MVP award. Now, if we look at stats, not really eye-popping compared to his 2019 MVP season. Now, in 2019, in his MVP season, he had 3,127 yards passing, 36 TDs, and 6 interceptions. Now, this year so far, we only have 15 games played. He has more passing yards, 3,357 of those, but he has 19 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. Now, if you kind of look at it, obviously, without getting a deeper dive into, he's throwing more interceptions, obviously, possibly a 3-to-1 touchdown ratio there, 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio there. And now if we look at his rushing numbers, he's had 142 carries for 786 yards. He's had 5 touchdowns on the ground. Now, again, responsible for 24 of those touchdowns there for the team. I mean, he's making the most impact on his team. Now, obviously, people can say, oh, well, what about Christian McCaffrey? What about a Tyreek Hill, et cetera? We'll get into those numbers as well. But obviously, we know that the MVP award is a quarterback award, unfortunately. Maybe that they'll get into something further down in our lifetime to where it's say, you know what, let's have a quarterback MVP and then let's have an offensive player MVP. Obviously, not including the quarterback. So that way you're able to include a running back, you're able to include a wide receiver or anything like that if they have these high numbers that can compare, with a quarterback, at least from outside looking in. Now, again, I gave you Lamar's stats. I do believe he should be MVP. I think he's proved a lot this year that even when they were struggling a little bit in the beginning, the defense held it down for them, but he's really shown that in key moments, he can get down the field and he can deliver. He can put them in position to get a game-winning field goal, a game-tying field goal, or he can get them down into the red zone, and he has proven to score when he is down there. Now, I think it's fair to say the Ravens should be the favorite to get to the Super Bowl and even win the Super Bowl. And now if we're looking at it from the NFC standpoint, I think you still have to put the 49ers there. The 49ers outgained them still in all aspects of the game. So I'd be very interested in seeing a Super Bowl matchup between these two. I think that you still have to include the 49ers in the NFC. I think you have to still declare them the future winners of the NFC and representing the NFC in the Super Bowl at the end of the day. It's just that, yeah, they lost by 14, but Brock Purdy had 4 interceptions. I don't think that's going to happen again, especially when they do meet in the Super Bowl. You kind of have to see what kind of game plan that they're going to be coming out with, obviously, for that. But I still think it's fair to say you're going to have the Ravens versus the 49ers for the Super Bowl. Now, talking about MVP, obviously, I'm gonna give you guys probably. I'm gonna go a top three list here for MVP. Now, currently, courtesy of FanDuel for you guys, the odds of the AP NFL regular season MVP awards go as is. Lamar Jackson is leading the pack at a minus 175 odds there for winning MVP, so he is the current favorite. Christian McCaffrey is in second at plus 470, and then we have Tua Tagovailoa at plus 900. Again, Brock Purdy going into the weekend was at least top one, obviously being one, or top two in the NFL of regular season MVP odds. But now he dropped all the way down to fifth, tied with Josh Allen at plus 1,300 odds for the MVP award. Now, I don't argue this list at all, but I still think that you have to put Christian McCaffrey at a very, very, very close second. Just what he's done this year is truly remarkable. Now, if we're looking at his numbers here, he is at a career high in rushing yards this year. He has 258 carries for 1,395 yards, 14 touchdowns. And again, that's just on the ground. Now, if we're getting into his receiving stats, they're just as good. 63 receptions, 537 yards for 7 TDs, responsible for 21 touchdowns so far with 3 games remaining in the season. Again, it's Christian McCaffrey. We've seen throughout the course of the years that when he was hurt, we knew what kind of ceiling he would have. But the fact that he's really been able to stay healthy with this team, A, it's very important, and B, it shows that what he can truly do when he has a full season under his belt. Obviously, he has a great line. He has a great team around them. But you know what? In order to really be a truly great player, I think you still have to be able to separate yourself even with all those weapons around you, like a Debo, with a George Kittle, with that great offensive line and Trent Williams leading the pack there. And again, a competent quarterback in Brock Purdy. Again, I am not blaming him for anything of what happened. You have those games. That was just his bad game and took Brock Purdy out of the running for the MVP, at least in my eyes for this year. And I'm pretty sure in everybody else's eyes as well. But I think it's fair to say that Christian McCaffrey's numbers, again, I would still place him at a very close second, but you cannot disregard what he has done so far this season. Now, we're looking into it even further. Tua Tagovailoa, they got him at third. Now, do I think he should be third? I don't think so. I think you have to include Tyreek Hill into that mix. I think Tyreek Hill should round out the top 3 there for MVP if we are talking. And then I think you can bump Tua down to at least 4 because, again, Tua is throwing Tyreek the ball, but Tyreek is making it happen as well. So it's just not, Tua's always putting him in a good spot. Obviously, it's 50-50, but with the numbers that Tyreek Hill has over the course of this season, I think you got to put him in 3. So at least for me, my top 3 list for the MVP, it's going to lead with Lamar Jackson, obviously, because they're the best team in the NFL. He is leading them. Obviously, they have a top 5 defense, for so far in this season. But he is leading them. He is passing. He's using the weapons all around him. He's leading them down the field when they need it most. And that offense, obviously, is just going to keep getting better and better. And obviously, going into next year as well. But Lamar Jackson is going to lead the NFL MVP for me. Then in second, I'm going to have Christian McCaffrey based off of his numbers as well. And then for third, I'm actually going to bump Tua out of third. Obviously, if FanDuel has him at third, I'm going to put Josh Allen back in there as well in the top 3 for the MVP talk conversation. With the way that he's been leading, obviously in the Cowboys game, threw for less than 100 yards. I believe it was 94. Didn't really do much. They did a lot on the ground, and their defense played really, really well too. But the fact that he is leading them, not making as many turnovers or anything like that, and really being a leader that we've all asked him to be, I think is very important. So it's going to go Lamar Jackson, Christian McCaffrey, and then Josh Allen for my top 3 list of MVP for the regular season. Now, transitioning over, we are going to be talking about the Kansas City Chiefs struggling. And I don't even know if you can say struggling is the right word for this team. And it's mainly on the offensive side of the ball. We've never really seen them this discombobulated on the offensive side of the ball with a Travis Kelce and with a Patrick Mahomes. Now, this team he just doesn't have the weapons. And I know we can say that, he's had Tyreek before, what they did last year. Last year, they still had more weapons. Juju was a very reliable and underrated receiver that I think a lot of people took for granted, especially when he left. That was really Patrick Mahomes' security blanket at the end of the day, whether that was to get, 5, 6 yards in the middle of the field or even outside of the numbers or anything like that. And obviously, Juju's not this great receiver or anything like that. He's had his share of injuries, etc. But at the end of the day, you need guys like that in order to help your quarterback be successful. Now, granted, again, they lead the league in drops. I believe their wide receiver group has close to 30 drops on the season, which is really unheard of for this type of contending team. Now, again, going to dive into Patrick Mahomes' numbers for the year so far. And now, again, when you're looking on the outside and you're just looking at the stats, you would say he's having a really good year, I would say. Again, 3 games remaining, and he has 3,938 yards passing. He has 26 touchdowns passing, and he has 14 interceptions. Again, you would say that's a good year for a quarterback. But again, when we're looking at it from what Patrick Mahomes can actually do, I think you got to tell yourself that, or even look at it and say that he is really pressing this season. I think the frustrations of this team are starting to build up with him and everybody else around him. And again, as the quarterback, you are the leader. He is a captain of this team, one of the captains of this team. He has to keep his composure. He has to keep his cool. At the end of the day, man, I don't think that this team can contend. Now, I believe that the only way they'll really contend is if that defense really sharpens up in a playoff game. I do think they'll make the playoffs, unless, obviously, if they have a total collapse in these last 3 games. But if that defense can really sharpen up and really hold up that offense to where maybe if the offense gets them 13 points, if the defense can hold whichever team that they may be playing to 13 or less, then I think they have the best chance of winning. But if this offense cannot get something going, if they cannot get anything going, and even Travis Kelce as well, I feel like really hasn't had that much of a big impact, at least within these last handful of games. I really don't think you can consider them a contender just based off of the offensive side of the ball. Now, again, we all know defense wins championships. You have to get a stop or at least a couple of stops in order to really separate yourself. I think that defense can do that, but can the offense do just enough? And can Patrick Mahomes and company do just enough to help this team get further along? But I do not think that you can really consider them a contender, especially among the Ravens. I really think that the Ravens would dismantle this team completely. And obviously with the Ravens defense, I don't see how you would expect Patrick Mahomes to make any type of magic with the weapons he has around him besides Travis Kelce at the end of the day. That's just where I'm at. You guys can be different and think otherwise or anything of that nature, but that's just from what I see. And obviously, again, this isn't my full time of watching games or anything like that, but being able to look at it from the grand scheme of things, you could tell that Patrick Mahomes and this team is really pressing on the offensive side of the ball. If you guys think different, let me know. But I don't think you can consider them a contender after losing to the Las Vegas Raiders. Next thing we're going to be getting into, Joe Flacco really revitalizing his career, getting a chance with the Cleveland Browns. Now, my main question that I posed was that can he be just enough to lead them to at least a conference championship or obviously a Super Bowl? Now, we haven't seen Joe Flacco play the Ravens. Can he do well against the Ravens? How would the team hold up as a whole against the Ravens? Can Joe Flacco, in the right time, still be this competent quarterback that he's really being and continue to get the offense rolling, especially through the air? It's hard to say, but if everything goes right for them in the playoffs, I think that he can lead them to a conference championship game. I also do think he can lead them to a Super Bowl based off of his own experience, obviously winning a Super Bowl with the Baltimore Ravens. But we look at his stats. First game against the Rams, again, his first game, 254 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Against the Jaguars, 311 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Against my hometown Bears, 374 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. And then against the Texans, where Amari Cooper went off as well, I had him on my fantasy team. Got me 51.5 points. Got me to the fantasy football championship. praises. But against the Texans on Christmas Eve, 368 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I think the numbers speak for themselves. Again, this offensive line has always been solid, has always been great. Stefanski has always based his offense off of the run game and a lot of play action. And the fact that Joe Flacco is really being accurate for them at the right times is really allowing this offense to flourish. And I do believe, again, if everything goes right for this team in the playoffs, he can at least get them to a conference championship game, because he's going to do just enough for that offense to where the defense just has to get a couple of stops. He's going to do just enough to where that defense has to get a couple of stops, and he can hold it down for them. That, again, that's just me. That's my opinion. You guys can be different with that. I just think that Joe Flacco, again, has all these weapons around him. He has a good running game, again, a good offensive line. He has great wide receivers. David Njoku as well has really flourished under Joe Flacco. They have built great chemistry. And again, Joe Flacco and Amari Cooper have built great chemistry as well. So I think you really need that. You really needed that to happen quick in order for this offense to really match up with the defense. Again, I read you his stats. They're not bad at all for just coming in on the latter part of the season when they really needed him. He's answering the call. Joe Flacco can lead this team to a Super Bowl at best. At worst, I think he will lead them at least to a conference championship game. Again, in the Cleveland Browns' eyes, and I believe at least for Cleveland Brown fans, I think you can consider that a successful season. After everything that they've been through, obviously with the Baker fiasco, OBJ fiasco, with those teams that you thought was going to lead this team to a Super Bowl, this was a huge bounce back for Stefanski after a bad year last year. You know what? I think you can consider it successful if they get to a conference championship game, whether they win or lose, and Joe Flacco is leading that team. At the end of the day as well, if this team was smart, I think you have to sign Joe Flacco beyond this season as well. You look at what he's been able to do. Again, he's on the older side. He's 38 years old. We all understand that. But I think he can be a valuable backup, especially if Deshaun Watson cannot play. And that's going to be very, very important as we continue on this stretch through the course of the end of the season and going into the playoffs as well. Now, next thing we're going to be getting into Coach of the Year in the NFL. Currently, our Coach of the Year odds stand as, so we got Dan Campbell leading the pack here at plus 275, which is provided to us by BetMGM Sportsbook. Got DeMeco Ryans coming in at second at plus 300, and then Shane Steichen of the Indianapolis Colts as well coming in tied for second at plus 300. Again, both DeMeco and Shane Steichen are tied at plus 300 odds for the NFL Coach of the Year odds. Now, if you were looking based off of talent, I think you have to give it to DeMeco Ryans and what he's done. Again, 8-7 for the Houston Texans. Nobody expected them to be this competitive this year. Granted, the division is pretty much up and down, but no one expected them to be this competitive with a rookie quarterback and the weapons that they had around them. Got Nico Collins. Tank Dell went down, unfortunately, with a season-ending injury. You have Dalton Schultz, who's kind of been on the injury list a little bit this season. You have Noah Brown as well, who missed a handful of games this season as well. Even though the offensive line is it's held up, but it's not one of the best ones in the NFL by any means. And then the defense has shown up when they needed it to be. They're not a stout defense, obviously, like the Baltimore Ravens. Just throwing that example out there. Obviously, they're not on that level, but they've done enough. DeMeco Ryans is a defensive head coach. He's going to get that team right. But again, looking at the grand scheme of things, I think that you can really say DeMeco Ryans is deserving of that. And again, I believe DeMeco Ryans is very deserving of that award. He should definitely be in very, very close consideration for this award. But I'm going to have to give it to Dan Campbell, man. I'm going to have to give it to him because, you know what? 2021 came in first year with Detroit. 3-13-1. And this team didn't get their first win, I believe, until their 12th game. It's a very hard year for them, but again, you are establishing a culture at that point, and you really need the right players to come in, obviously, in the following years to really establish yourself. Again, looking back at last year, 2022, finished out at 9-8, just missing the playoffs, but they won the last game to keep the Packers out. I believe the Packers might have been already out because I knew Seattle won. So I think that they might have been already out, or at least Detroit was out already, and they had to beat the Packers and play spoiler there. And then now, obviously, we are looking at his record this year. And hey, man, you cannot disregard what he has done. And Detroit winning their first division title in 30 years as well. He's very deserving of it. The third guy that I'm going to be talking about too is Shane Steichen. Obviously, he was the offensive coordinator for the Eagles last year, and then he went over to the Indianapolis Colts, and they're 8-6. Like, Anthony Richardson's been hurt. The defense is playing okay, but the fact that Gardner Minshew has stepped in for them and really been able to hold that position down for the time being, you obviously have to put him in consideration as well, because nobody expected this team to be 8-6. Again, nobody expected the Houston Texans to be 8-7 with DeMeco Ryans. But I think when we're looking at it, when it's all said and done, after the season has concluded, Dan Campbell is going to be the coach of the year for the season for the Detroit Lions. Just can't disregard what he's done, the type of culture that he's instilled in this team. Obviously, he has the great talent around them. Really, I would say revitalizing Jared Goff's career as well. Jared Goff didn't have the greatest of raps going into it. Obviously, teammate-wise and all that, he's great, but you didn't know what he was going to give you at the quarterback position. You knew that he could throw with the right pieces around him. He could get yardage, can't get touchdowns. Might have his bad streak games like every other quarterback. But no, everybody counted him out after being with the Los Angeles Rams at that point. So I'm going to choose Dan Campbell. And again, DeMeco Ryans is going to be a very close second for me. But we'll have to see, obviously, how Dan Campbell finishes out the season. I think that's going to really be a telltale sign for us. And then obviously, if DeMeco and the Houston Texans finish out strong, he should be in consideration as well. Now, flipping it on over and transitioning over to the NBA, we're going to be talking about Detroit Pistons and Monty Williams to start it off. Now, obviously, still on that losing streak, and they were winning against the Brooklyn Nets earlier today before I started recording for this episode here. They were winning 15-5 in the first quarter, and they are down 57-63. So possibly on, again, another losing streak there, but their streak, I believe, is going to hit at 27 games if they lose this game. Now, it's very hard to say. Obviously, again, we're only 29 games into the season. Monty Williams' first season as the head coach. I pose the question of, would his job really be safe? Let's say they finish with one of the worst records ever. Can his job really be safe after the first year? Can the owner be patient? Can the owner see the bigger picture? I believe Monty can turn this thing around, but I think you got to make some trades. Obviously, Cade is your main guy. There's been a lot of rumors about, San Antonio should trade for him, which I think would be amazing to pair him with Wemby. I think that'd be a crazy combo. But obviously, you got Cade. They re-signed Isaiah Stewart. You got Jalen Duren. Got Jaden Ivey. You still got Bogdan. No, it's Bojan. Yeah, you still got Bojan Bogdanovic. Still have Killian Hayes, even though he hasn't been the greatest. Still got a lot of young pieces, man. Joe Harris, Monty Morris, which is a very important backup point guard piece for them, hasn't played this season yet either. But you got a lot. You got a lot of young talent there. At least some cornerstones that you can really build around in my eyes. At least Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren for at least the time being, or at least the immediate future if you're looking for immediate success. But can the fan base be patient and see the bigger picture? Can the ownership see the bigger picture with Monty Williams in the fold? I'm taking a lot of pauses there, but as I'm saying it, it's very bleak. But also as I'm saying it, I'm just thinking of that if I was in a GM position, that's how I would look at it. It's like, you know what? this culture's been bad regardless ever since really Blake Griffin left. Blake Griffin led them to their last postseason appearance, and they haven't done anything since. So at the end of the day, you got to be patient. Look at OKC, man. Like, they have all this great talent. They got all this great talent now. They went through the years of losing, but you see it really, really paying off. And again, they're still one of the bottom 3 teams as far as age goes. Obviously, not record-wise, they're one of the top teams in the West. Shea is leading that. Chet is my rookie of the year as well. It's very tough to say, man, for the city of Detroit and the Detroit Pistons. They've been, ever since that last championship, they haven't been the greatest at all. Haven't been able to really establish a culture. So many coaches, so many players going through there. So many GMs as well, besides Joe Dumars. He's got to figure something out, man. But I do not think that they'll fire Monty Williams after the first year, at least. Giving him all that money, that's going to be guaranteed no matter what. He's still going to get that money, even if he's going to be fired. But they got to be patient. At the end of the day, that's all you can do, man. That is all you can do. So, no, I do not think that they're going to fire him. I don't think his job will be at stake if they finish with one of the worst records ever. That's, again, yet to be seen. This team is not one of the worst teams ever, like we've seen with, like, you know, Charlotte Bobcats back in the day, or when they first became the Hornets. I forgot what year that was. But this team, talent-wise, they're not a 2-27 currently. Next thing we're going to be getting into, Zion Williamson. Been in the news a lot the last couple of weeks as far as his conditioning goes. Now, his contract is no longer guaranteed after, double check it here. So his contract is no longer guaranteed after the 2025 season. So the last 3 years, 2025, 2026, 26, 27, and 2027, 2028 seasons have gone from guaranteed to non-guaranteed. And that is because he only played in 29 games last year. And as a result of that, New Orleans possesses the contractual power to waive Williamson after the 2024-25 season without financial ramifications. Now, does Zion Williamson force his way out, or does this make it easier for the New Orleans Pelicans to just trade the star away so that way they actually get something in return? As I watch his games, how are you not more dominant? You can really jump higher than everybody. Again, everybody has been on your conditioning. You can see it as a fan, like I am, when you're watching his games. You see he doesn't run as hard. But with the talent that you have, I mean, really, you just have your left hand, but as soon as you get into the paint, nobody can stop you. How are you just not better than what you're being, especially with this team is talented. The New Orleans Pelicans are talented. You have Brandon Ingram leading the way there. You have a seasoned vet in CJ McCollum at the point guard position. You have Jonas Valanciunas. You have young studs on the defensive side of the ball who can also shoot, by the way. Herb Jones is one of the main guys I'm going to talk about there. Jose Alvarado, again, great defensive. Again, he's small, but a great defensive guard to have on your team, and a little bit of an irritant as well because he's always going to give you 110%. It reminds me of Russell Westbrook as far as his effort goes. Again, always gives 110% effort while he's out there on the court. You have pieces. This team can do some damage, but if Zion Williamson does not buy in, and we've heard him kind of question that he is trying to buy in, if you're already saying that, I think you really put yourself on a timeline with this team, which is really, really unfortunate because after Anthony Davis, this team really, really needed a spark. Provided it for a little bit. Obviously, didn't play much your first 3 seasons due to injuries. But at the end of the day, man, you have all the talent in the world. Maybe he just wants to go to a bigger market at the end of the day. And maybe that's where he'll really flourish because he really wants to, maybe he just wants that attention to be on a bigger market like the New York Knicks, possibly Chicago Bulls. Now, again, me being a Bulls fan, I am not mad at that one bit. Besides I would say when Lonzo, the first year that this team got established with Lonzo, DeMar, um, Vooch, Zach, this team really looked good. They were number one in the East for a bit until the Lonzo injury. Then everything just came down. But we've only had a half season's worth of winning out of, besides the Derrick Rose years, we've only had a half season worth of winning that was great basketball. At this point, we have nothing to lose. We got nothing to lose, in my opinion, as the Chicago Bulls and as a fan of this team as well. Got nothing to lose. So if Zion Williamson just really wants to go to a bigger market and that's where he's gonna really flourish, then I think at that point, request a trade. Get out of New Orleans. Stop wasting your years then. We've seen a lot of players speak out about that they want to go to a bigger market or they want to go to a better team. You know what? The last 3 years of your contract are not guaranteed anymore. At this point, really, what do you got to lose? Teams are still going to sign you, as we kind of really talked about in earlier episodes. He's still going to be on a team no matter what, just based off of his ceiling, just based off of his talent. But now, what are you really waiting for? That's the biggest motivator and the biggest question with him. Next thing we're going to be getting into, it's the last thing of the NBA. Phoenix Suns. Kind of really talked about them a lot this last month. The big three, D-Book, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, only played in 2 games. But you can really say 1 full game because in the other one, somebody else got hurt. I think it was KD who got hurt. Or maybe even Brad Beal again. I don't know. He's not going to be reevaluated until after the new year. This team is 14-15 after the loss to the Dallas Mavericks, who look like a contender, by the way. And again, this is without Kyrie Irving. This is without Josh Green. I'll talk about them after this because I'm actually excited about that team. But again, Luka Doncic made Devin Booker say, that's my dad. Like, he dropped 50 on you. And this team Phoenix Suns just don't look on the same page at all. KD's body language is really bad. You can see D-Book is trying, at least what you can hear on the TV from like snippets and stuff like that, challenging people. You turn the ball over. Why didn't you run? Which is probably one of the clips that are going around now. KD's body language just does not look there. He doesn't look like he's making any type of efforts rotation-wise. Is it Frank Vogel's fault? No, not by any means. They haven't stayed healthy. That's first and main point. They haven't stayed healthy. But even when Bradley Beal does come back, and everybody's healthy, can this team really, really compete? I don't think you can. I don't think this team can compete at full strength. Again, KD just looks like he's taking a step back defensively. And again, it's getting up there in age as well. Can't expect him to be this, great defender all of a sudden. Devin Booker, again, averaging career highs in rebounds and assists this year, averaging about 28 points per game. But to me, he's scoring, yes, but it just does not look the same as we've seen in previous years. Now, is D-Book that guy? Yes. Is D-Book that guy to really, really lead? Like, be that main guy leading? Obviously, when they got to the finals, they had a great leader in CP3. And Monty as well, really establishing that culture. I don't know. I don't know if D-Book is that guy to lead you there, rally the troops, get you guys there. Same thing with KD. He's not a vocal guy. Again, they have great talent when they're fully healthy. They possibly have to, at the end of the day, they might just have to make some trades. Now, I did pull up some trade ideas that have been kind of floating around for this team. Possibly a trade that you can think of. Bol, again, hasn't really got any minutes either, especially with Nurkic out. The handful of games that he's been out, really hasn't gotten any time at all, which is very surprising. but obviously it makes you think that there's something deeper going on to why he isn't playing. But again, possibly doing a bowl and maybe a second round draft pick for Torrey Craig to the Bulls. Again, the Bulls have nothing to lose. They're not going anywhere. So maybe get a tall talent like Bull and see what he can do. Obviously, they're maybe not going to let him go 30, 35 minutes or anything like that. Maybe 20, 24 and see what he can really do. I think that would be a good trade. Another potential trade, Yuta Watanabe, who, again, sharpshooting, wing, hasn't really played that much since the beginning of the year. Bol, Keita Bates-Diop as well. He's kind of been in and out of the rotation for possibly DeLon Wright, backup point guard for Washington, and Patrick Baldwin Jr., again, another young prospect who can shoot the ball and can score the ball, again, in his limited time with Golden State and Washington so far. I think that would be a good trade. You really have to shore up that backup point guard position. I think, again, Phoenix Suns really don't have that besides Book. And then another potential trade, possibly Keita Bates-Diop for JaVale McGee, getting another big man. Besides Nurkic, and Drew Eubanks. Drew Eubanks is an undersized center. I believe he's 6'9". And again, I'm saying it like 6'9", like he's undersized, but by NBA standards, he is for a center. His game is limited already, but maybe bringing in a 7-footer again in JaVale McGee, that might help. That might help unlock this team. Again, they have very few assets that they can really work with, but I'm sure that they can figure something out. Maybe again, like that Bull 2028 second round draft pick for Torrey Craig. Again, they need wings. You can never have enough wing defenders at the end of the day. And then possibly, Keita Bates-Diop for JaVale McGee. I think that would really help this team. Last part of the question that I posed was that, is this team just poorly constructed when healthy, possibly with a Bradley Beal? Maybe. You had 13 new players this season. 13. When you think of it, like, that it's almost unheard of to really try and be successful, especially in your first part, or at least your first season, with everybody really coming in. Again, doesn't help that Brad Beal hasn't been healthy whatsoever, and that's always been one of his things as well. It's always the injury bug. You knew what kind of player he was. When he's on the court, cool, get you points. He hasn't really been a great defender or anything like that. That's yet to be seen with these three guys on the court, if he can really pull that in. But again, I think that they're just poorly constructed even when Bradley Beal comes back. Just have to wait and see, man. Just have to wait and see towards the end of the season, see where their seeding is at. Right now, I believe that they are 11th or 12th in the West on the outside looking in. But again, we're only 28, 30 games into the season so far. You have to wait until he comes back, until this team is healthy for a good period of time to really, really tell if this team can actually do something. Now, going into that, KD, a lot of people have been questioning his, what's the right word? I guess you can feel his frustration. You can, again, I talked about his body language. You can see KD's body language on the court. Just doesn't look the same. Obviously, in previous years, again, he's getting older. Doesn't have possibly much time left in the league possibly doesn't have much time left in the league. I would say possibly at least a good handful of years, maybe a little bit less, depending on if he really wants to take it that far. Again, it's going to be approaching 40 by that time. I don't know. Again, it just goes back to this team not being healthy. KD can score, he can do all of that, but it's not going to make up for the faults of everybody else at the end of the day. So, again, this team is just kind of wait and see mode at the end of the day. That's all you can do. And again, as a Phoenix Sun fan, you guys have had great teams these last handful of years. Sucks because you guys have the talent, at least from those three, and Nurkic as a fourth. But unfortunately, you're in wait and see mode. That's all you can do. That's all you can wait for. Now, adding this on here and kind of ad-libbing it a little bit, Dallas Mavericks, man. Dallas Mavericks, to me, after last year, you could have said that this team's not going to be good whatsoever with Luka. But again, re-signing Kai, which I kind of questioned a little bit. I will say that because again, given with the um, sample that we had last year, I think again they were really trying to make it work, and I think you really saw that this year so far. Been playing off of each other. Obviously, Luka being that first option, Kai going to that second option for this team, and obviously whenever they need a bucket, they'll go to him. But you got the size, Derek Lively. After what I saw at Duke, I did not see this player starting for this team and being as consistent as he's really been, especially as a rim runner, as a pick setter on the defensive side of the ball. Again, a young Tyson Chandler. That's what I see with him. Obviously better. Possibly again, they were talking about years down the road. I would think he will be a better player than Tyson Chandler. Tim Hardaway Jr. has been balling. Grant Williams, a solid pickup. Jaden Hardy playing well. Dante Exum revitalizing his career. There's just again, we're not even talking about Josh Green yet. Got Kyrie Irving. This team is deep, man. They're a deep team. Again, everything is predicated on health. But with Luka leading the way like he is, he looks like he's having fun again. Last year, you saw that he was really pressing, really getting down on his team. Obviously, they weren't that good. It was poorly constructed last year, but this is the possibly one of the best teams, or at least the best stretches of teams I think that he will have in his career. I'm also hoping for that Nikola Jokic and Luka Doncic possible team up. That'd be very interesting as well. Do I think that can happen? Obviously, it's going to be a later part of their careers because they have already signed, massive extensions, and they're going to be maybe in their prime or towards the end of their prime anyways. So time will tell. But you never know. It's a good pipe dream to have. Would he go to Dallas, or would Luka go to Denver? I don't think Luka would ever go to Denver. I don't think Mark Cuban would ever let that happen. Maybe Jokic decides to come down to Dallas. Who knows? But again, obviously, time will tell. But Dallas Mavericks, I'll consider them at least when fully healthy, when everybody's back. Top 4, top 3 team in the West. Can they get there? I think so. With this team and how they're rolling, especially if they can play defense like this, I would say that they can definitely get to a Western Conference final or possibly the finals fully healthy. And if, everything goes right for them. Now, last part of the episode for number 70 for you guys, we're going to get into the MLB. Obviously, we talked about the Shohei Ohtani deal. 10 years, $700 million. He deferred $680 million of that after his 10 years are up. So he's only getting paid $2 million in base salary. And then obviously he's making everything else in endorsements, etc. And the Dodgers end up signing another star talent out of Japan, Yamamoto. Does the MLB have a salary problem? Meaning to where that a salary cap should be placed? Again, 2 of these players, Shohei Ohtani and Yamamoto, you make more than half the MLB teams, if I'm not mistaken. Let me double check that here because it's crazy, in my opinion. How do you have players? Let's see here. How do you have players that are making more than entire teams? Let's see here. All right, here we go. So we got the Philadelphia Phillies leading that $222 million payroll. Texas Rangers, $197 million. Houston, $193 million. Obviously, we see the top teams, bigger markets, willing to spend. But you got 2 players that are making more than the Baltimore Orioles, the Oakland A's, Tampa Bay Rays, Pittsburgh Pirates, Cleveland Guardians, Miami Marlins, Milwaukee Brewers, Cincinnati Reds. We'll even throw in Arizona as well when you're, you know, if Shohei was actually getting paid the 70 million that he actually was this year. Um, like basically they're making 100 million together. Washington Nationals, my Chicago White Sox, Seattle Mariners, as well. And again, these are the updated payrolls so far for 2024. Obviously, those numbers might fluctuate a bit, but again, Detroit, Kansas City, and we'll throw in Minnesota there as well as that's there around 108 million. But should the MLB consider a salary cap? I think that's very, very hard, especially now since a lot of these players are on 10-year deals. I think a salary cap in the MLB would be really, really hard because you have a lot of these players that have signed previously. And then now you are going to handcuff a lot of these teams that pay a lot of money. And then again, if you have a salary cap, are you also going to expect teams to spend a certain amount as well? What if they don't want to? You know, in the MLB, or I'm sorry, in the NBA, you have to have a salary, like a floor, a salary cap floor. You just can't have, you know, sign everybody to minimum deals, be one of the worst teams or anything like that. You have to spend a certain amount of money. Again, the bigger markets spend to win. They spend the money to keep talent or even bring talent in. But with the MLB, I think that'll be one of the hardest things to put in place. Again, yeah, they have a luxury tax, but these bigger market teams are willing to pay the luxury tax to put the best possible product on the field, to put the best possible players on the field as well. Again, it would be one of the hardest things, I think, at least to establish. If someone at least tells me maybe some steps that they can do to establish that, I'm cool with it. I think an MLB salary cap would be a good thing for the league. That way it's an even playing field. Again, obviously, we know you have your bigger markets, especially with in the NBA, you see that players want to go to the bigger markets. The bigger markets spend more anyways. You know, would a Baltimore Orioles team want to be required to at least required or at least have a mandatory say in, you know what? Yeah, you guys have to spend 75 million for players. That's your minimum floor. That's hard for these small market teams and a lot of these owners because a lot of these owners already don't want to spend money. So what if they do have to spend money? Maybe it might lead to more turnaround in ownership as well. Who knows? But I think that is a fair question to ask. Now, is it fair to say that a salary cap is needed based off of markets? Again, you're getting into TV deals that are had by separate teams as well. The Dodgers make $250 million a year in revenue from their network, if I'm not mistaken. And the Miami Marlins are one of the least at $50 million a year. So again, just based off of that, for the Dodgers, based off of the amount of money that they're going to bring in, again, locally throughout the United States and again, globally, especially now that you have one of Japan's two biggest stars, they're going to rake in probably $1 billion. I wouldn't even be surprised. But again, it's going to be very, very hard to establish that, you know, down the road because again, you have these players making already big money. And then now all of a sudden you're going to have to try and figure out all these trades. You're going to have to try and figure out where this person goes based off of this contract. Or now you're going to lead possibly into teams wanting to switch bad contracts, kind of similar to what you see in the NBA. So that way they can get the talent. Who knows? It's very hard. But at the end of the day, again, like I always say, we'll see. Only time will tell. But for me, guys, that is the end of episode 70. Again, leading into the new year. As we get there, hope you guys have a happy new year with your families. Hope you guys accomplish your goals going into the new year as well. Again, we're going to continue growing this, going to continue pushing out content for you guys. You know, we're just going to keep it going. We're going to keep it pushing. If there's anything you guys want to see, let us know too. Keep interacting and commenting on our posts. I know we had a couple of videos that this past week did really, really well, especially the Miami Marlins one. A lot of people commenting on there. Won't say what they were saying, so you might have to go check it out. But it was pretty funny just looking at it. I see now why people say that, social media might get to them, especially with people's comments and stuff like that. But it's very hard not to laugh at it. So it's keep commenting, keep viewing, and keep sharing our content too. But again, check out our content on TikTok, Instagram. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Again, it's free to subscribe. This helps our channel grow. And then also don't forget to download your episodes, your weekly episodes on your podcast streaming of choosing, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon as well, I believe we're on. But have a happy new year. See you guys in 2024. Again, we're going to keep it pushing. I'm going to keep pushing everything out for you guys. And hope you guys, again, have a great rest of the week. Finish out the week strong. Start the new year strong. All right, guys. See you guys next week. Episode number 71. Have a good one, guys. Bye-bye.